Hello, this is Doug Gerlach. Welcome to our Investment Club webinar. Today is November 16th, 2021. And tonight we're going to be talking about managing investment club members and visitors in myiclub.com. Specifically, what permissions and roles you can assign to members, how you can navigate through the people section, and how you can restrict access to various features or enable access to those features for the members of your club and the visitors who may be considering your club becoming members of your investment club. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. In the back office, as always, are Sean Pulrang and Russell Malley. So if you have questions, please use that questions box. I'll do my best to address as many of the questions as I can, but also Sean and Russell are on hand to help out and may also be providing answers to your questions. There is a PDF of the slides of the presentation tonight that you can download. Click on the Handouts tab and click the Adobe icon there, the link, and save that PDF file to your computer for future reference or to print and make notes on very quickly as we go through our presentation tonight. So without further ado, let's talk about members and visitors and officers and treasurers, administrators, who they are, what they are, and we'll start by taking a look at some key definitions, if you were, the various types of individuals who have access to your club website. When we talk about members, this is any individual who has, quote, member access to your club's private myiclub.com website. They have their own username and password that allows them to log into your club's website, and they can only be added or removed to your club's website by your club's administrator or other officer who has privileges to invite and eject members. Now, a member of your MyIClub website may or may not be a member of your investment club. And so we have to kind of keep that distinction in mind. The reason for this is that some clubs might utilize an outside accountant or a tax preparer or someone who handles their bookkeeping. That individual needs to have member access, but is not technically a member of the investment club. That is, they do not have an investment in the club's portfolio. So we're going to be talking primarily about members of the club website, and we'll also talk about members of the investment club, and those are two distinct types of individuals. We also allow your club to invite visitors or guests, and these visitors are individuals who have limited access to the club's MyIClub website. We'll talk more about some of the areas that they do have access to a little bit later on. These visitors also have a username and password that allows them to log into MyIClub and access your club's website, but they don't have access to all of the features that members do. These also can only be added or removed by a club administrator or the officer who has privileges to invite and eject members. The visitor program is set up to allow prospects or candidates for club membership to kind of get to know the club, to be able to review the important documents, to be able to understand how the club is making their investing decisions. And so that's the rationale for having visitor access to your club. And the administrator is the person who can change visitors to members when they join the club. If they join the club, you can also remove their access to the club. If they decide they've seen enough, they're not really interested, you can remove their access as well. And this, you'll notice a theme here in terms of the security of your club's website is that your club's administrator, your club's policies determine who can access the club's website. So random passersby on the internet can't wander in. There's no one else who can access your club's information, data, files. Only your club administrator or other designated officer can allow individuals to get inside your club's website. Now, when we talk about administrators, administrator is an individual who has complete access to all features of the club's MyIClub website. This is determined in the member positions and permissions area of a member's profile. and there's no checkbox that says this person is an administrator. It simply looks at, the program looks at all of the member positions and permissions. If they're all checked, that person is considered an administrator. Often this is the founder or the manager of the club's My iClub website. In some clubs, the administrator is someone who is more technically savvy, and so they're tasked with the responsibility of handling the club website technical side. It could be the president at the time the club started who became the administrator. You can change the administrator at any point in time. It may be a treasurer, it may be another officer, but that's not a requirement. But you just keep in mind that administrators have access to all member information. So they have access to members' individual information, their social security numbers, their address, their contact information, plus all transactions. They can make changes as well. Clubs must always have at least one administrator, and so if you have a single administrator and that administrator departs the club, you cannot actually remove them until another administrator is created or given those permissions. You can have a backup administrator, you could have two administrators, co-administrators, but it's a good idea not to allow too many people to have the keys to the castle, as it were. These administrators that have the potential to wield a lot of power and control. They can delete the club, they can delete the club's transactions, they can wipe it off the face of the earth. So you want to be sure not to allow too many people to have that capability. You can identify the administrators in your club. If you go to My iClub, click on the People tab, and there is an Administrators tab there. Click on that, and you will see the individuals in your club who have been identified as administrators. If you're seeing 4 or 5 administrators, that's probably too many, and you should take a look and see who's actively an administrator and who really needs to have the capabilities. And again, one thing to point out is that as a matter of last recourse, the ICLUBcentral customer service team can assist. If something tragic were to happen to your single administrator, we could facilitate setting up the next administrator. We prefer that clubs handle it on their own, that manage their clubs and their club permissions and officer roles on their own, but we can assist in circumstances that are out of the club's control. So that's a little bit about the role of administrators. Now, treasurers are a type of officer, very specific, and many people think of treasurers as really being the core users of the club's My iClub website because they're recording accounting information. A treasurer in My iClub is identified as a person who has the permissions checked to record accounting information / receive renewal notices. So that is a blanket permission that allows that individual to enter, delete, or edit any financial transactions. They can enter buys and sells, they can enter dividends received, they can enter member transactions, expenses, interest, etc. They may have permission to perform other functions as well, but the core here is that they have the ability to record that accounting information. Now, all administrators have treasurer access, but not necessarily do all treasurers have administrator access. It's good to have a backup treasurer, but it's also good not to allow to have too many individuals to have treasurer privileges. Remember that your administrator actually is a backup treasurer as well, because they have that permission. And also keep in mind that on your club's website, all members can view transactions. It's just that treasurers are the ones who can enter, edit, or delete them. To find out who your treasurers are, you can go to the People tab and click on the Treasurers tab. And again, hopefully there's 1 or 2 names listed there. If you have more than that, chances are that a past treasurer never had the permissions removed, and so the administrator should take action to remove that permission from someone who is not actively serving in the role or in a backup capacity. And we have experienced problems where past treasurers didn't have the permissions removed after they were no longer serving as treasurers, and they were poking around in the club's website and inadvertently deleted data, thinking that, well, I'm not the treasurer, so this is just I'm just removing this from my view, this particular set of data, so that I could look at the report that I wanted to, and ended up wiping out a month or two's worth of club data. So it's very, very important that your club only has a limited number of treasurers, people who have that key treasurer permission to enter your data. And then finally, we'll talk about officers. There's no formal way to set officers in my iClub. All of the officer tasks that you might expect your president, vice president, secretary to undertake are determined by the member position and permissions section of the member profiles in the people tab. We'll take a look at those a little bit later and give you some suggestions and ideas about how those permissions can be set for various officer roles. If you think about the way that a traditional investment club is set up, the secretary is taking minutes, and so in an online club environment, the secretary might be responsible for managing the message boards, which are the record of the club's discussions, for instance. So the secretary might also be responsible for managing the club's file storage area, because those are the documents of the club. And so there are all sorts of ways that you can arrange it. And so we've constructed the program to allow you to decide who handles which tasks within the investment club. Now, the administrator or designated officer can select or create roles for members, and a role is sort of like a title that you can give to specific members, but it's only used for identification purposes, and it doesn't really confer any privileges to that member. And again, we'll take a look at this and show you as we go through the people tab. I'll point out where those member roles and positions are, and the PDF will give you some guidance on making sure that things are set up according to best practices. So let's take a look at the people tab. This is one of the main areas of the My iClub website for your club. Just click on the link at the top that says people, and the people tab supports 3 types of individuals who may have access to some or all of your club's private website: members, former members, and visitors. And this page is managed by the club administrator or the member with appropriate permissions to invite and eject members. They can also access much of this information. Here's what the people tab looks like. You'll notice on the left there's a left navigation panel, and then there's a list of all of the members. It's got the name of the member, their role, as in here you can see there's a member, there's an accountant, their email address, the date that they joined the club website or the club. If they are online, that doesn't mean immediately, but that means do they have an account set up to access the club website? And then there are tools. There's a little exit door to withdraw them. There's a little edit icon, pencil icon to edit their profile. Across the top, you'll see the members, the treasurers, and the administrators tabs there, so you can identify who is the treasurer, who has treasurer access to the club. And as you move your mouse over those little icons on the right, you will get a sense of a little pop-up message that will give you an idea of what those icons represent. There's also a show former members link on the far right that you can worry about. The key tasks that the administrator or designated officer undertakes on the people tab, as well as individual members, is to add members. And when we add members, that creates an accounting record for them. Doesn't automatically grant them access to the club website. The invite function allows members or visitors to set up their usernames and passwords to the club website. So you can understand there's 2 steps here. If you had someone in your club who didn't have an email address or didn't have a computer and was still a member, you could add them, but they would not need to be invited because they don't have the capacity to log into your club's website. And we'll walk through these processes as well. The edit profile function allows members and visitors to, as well as administrators or designated officers, to edit and add the name, the address, the email information, the phone number, the emergency contact, etc. For each member. And again, that's private for members. They're the only ones who can edit their own information along with the administrator. We are looking at ways to review some of the privacy issues here. But right now, members can view other members' information. Visitors cannot view any members' personal information. Also from this task, you can withdraw members and remove them from the website, and we'll take a look at those tasks as well. So let's start by talking about how you add and remove members to your My iClub website. As I mentioned, there are 2 steps, adding and inviting. This can only be done by an administrator or a designated officer with the appropriate permissions to invite and eject members. And if you know the member's email address, you can add and invite them in one simple task. So it makes it simple if you have a new member that's joined your club, they've given you a check, they've been approved, get their email address right away, and then you can add and invite them and get the process rolling so they can access the club's website if they need to. The add member link on the left is where you start, and we'll take you to this page where you can type in a little welcome message at the top. You can create some default text if you wish, and save it, then enter the name and email address of that individual. The page is set up to invite multiple people, so you can add many members at once, a number of members at once. This is useful if you're switching over to My iClub from Club Accounting 3, for instance. You can invite a number of people all at one time just by entering the name and their email address here. Now, from here, the member will receive an email that has instructions for them to create their personal private My iClub account, which will grant them access only to your club's website. That invitation is time limited. It'll expire if it's not accepted. So if you have the ability to reach out to those members and send them a message and say, I just sent you a link to activate your My iClub account, be sure to read that message and click on it as soon as you can, because it will expire. Now, once you've sent out the link, you can track the progress of members who have been invited to the website by looking at the online column. The checkbox indicates that they have completed the registration process, they have set up their account and username, they can access the club's website. If there's an X, that means they haven't. So pretty straightforward. If the member contacts you as the administrator or treasurer and says, I can't log in, I thought I was set up and I'm not, the first thing to do is to check here. If there's an X in this column, that means they haven't set up their username and password, and so you can reissue that invitation to them. If it's showing a check mark that says yes, they do have a username and password, then they can reset their username or password, or the administrator can also issue a password reset. And if neither of those work, then the member should contact our support team. Not because it's the worst thing in the world when the administrator contacts us and says this member can't log in, and we say, all right, well, what happens when they try? And the administrator says, I don't know, they just told me they couldn't log in. We're just running around in circles. It's very inefficient. And if the member itself says, I'm a member of this club. Here's what's happening. I can't seem to log in. We can facilitate that much easier than having a go-between. But we do have the ability for administrators to issue that password reset. So if it's a member who says, none of my passwords work, I need to have it reset, and they can't figure out how to do it on their own, the administrator can do it. If you've got a current member of your club, so someone who's in your database, who's in the records, you've been processing checks for, and they got a computer for the first time, for instance, you can invite them to the club website from here. So this page looks similar to the add page, but the names are already here because they already are members. You just fill in the email addresses of those users, and it will send out that invitation that's got the instructions for how to create the link to click and how to create their username and password that will allow them to access your club's My iClub website. So works just like the add invite function, and the invitation is time limited and will expire. And you'll also notice there's a resend link. So if the member didn't accept it in time, you can resend that link. Maybe it went to their spam folder. So what happens after either of these add or invite emails go out? The individual gets that email. It's got a personalized link with instructions. They've got to click it, create a username, create a password, then they can log into the club's website. And also we've got a new member quick start guide that's got several pages of information about navigating the My iClub website as a new member of a club. It's in the file storage area. You can click on the link in the handout to download a copy to your computer right now. We've talked about it in some of our past webinars, and we'll be adding that link to that PDF quick start guide to the new member emails. So that's just not been completed yet. So that will be part of the new member introduction process that'll have the instructions for setting up their username and password, and then getting that quick start guide, which will walk them through some of the key features of the My iClub website that they can be aware of. So if a member says, oh, I tried clicking it and it said the link was expired, or you said you sent me the link, but I can't find it, you can see the outstanding invitations by clicking on that invitations outstanding link. You'll see something like this if there are any outstanding invitations, and then you can reset them. Definitely double check the email address. It could be that the email address there had a typo in it. So double check and verify that that's the right email address. Then click the resend button. Check the resend boxes and click the resend button. If it's perhaps it's a visitor who said, no, I'm not interested after all, then you can click the cancel box and click the cancel checked invitations button, and that will remove it from the outstanding list, so you don't have to worry about it every time. So that is another tool that you can look at as administrator or designated officer. Just a couple of reminders: members can't go directly to My iClub and create an account. There's no way to create an account without creating a club, and you don't need to create a club. You need to have access to an existing club, and the only way to get that is to be invited. So don't have members go directly to My iClub and try to sign up there. They've got to receive that invitation link from your club. And don't have them call us or email our support team and say, I want to join this club. We won't give out your club's information to anybody. So for obvious security reasons, this is the way the process works, and there's no getting around any of the particular steps, and that protects the privacy of your club and your club members. I mentioned the recover username password link. It's right there on the login screen. It says forgot your username or password. That's where you can click in. If you have set your security questions, you can answer those, and then reset a password. If you forgot your username, again, you can recover that using your email address as long as it exists. So that information is good to know about. I know that everyone here in the webinar tonight has never forgotten a username or password. But this is for the people in your club who have those particular problems, and I just wanted to make you aware of that. If you are an administrator and people forget the password, then you can reset it using that reset icon. So only administrators or people, designated officers with that invite or eject members permission will see that little reset password icon. So that's for the member who has forgotten their password and doesn't know how to reset it. You can reset it for them. What this does is it wipes out their current password from our database, sends them an email with a temporary password that they can use to log in, and then change their permanent password. So the instructions are there. So again, just be aware of that as an administrator. So we're going to next talk about managing member permissions and profiles that we keep talking about, the various permissions and profiles. These are set on a per member basis. There is a default set of permissions that all members have, and they can be tweaked for any member. Now, every member has control over their own profile. They can click, and when they look at the people page, they'll see a gear icon on the far right. That's how they can edit their own personal preferences, upload the photo to their profile, and enter their personal information by clicking on that icon. The member profile includes personal information that's required, such as name, email address, mailing address. We ask for the social security number because that's required for taxes. If they're a foreign partner, their emergency contact, telephone numbers, all that information is there in the member profile. The administrator or designated officer can also update that information, but it's good practice to have your members learn how to change it if they move, have them update their own member profile there on the website. Stockwatcher assignments can also be set or reviewed on the member profile. As I mentioned, the social security number is optional, but since it's required for tax filings, if it's not entered, the job is much harder for the treasurer, who must type in those numbers in order to e-file, for instance. So at some point, the social security numbers have to be entered. Our information is stored in an encrypted database. We're using a secure connection between your browser and our server, so the information is protected to the best of our ability. You can review our data security practices using the link at the bottom of the My iClub homepage if you are interested in that. The contact field is also there for an emergency contact if you wish. We don't support beneficiaries, so we don't recommend using those fields for any sort of beneficiary, but it is useful for an emergency contact. You might be surprised to hear just how often our support team gets inquiries from clubs saying, we've got a member, we can't reach them. They're not responding to emails. We can't reach them by phone. We don't have a current phone number. We sent letters in the mail. We're not hearing from them. If all of those members had an emergency contact, it might make that task a little easier. So as a club policy, that might be something that you should ask everyone to update that emergency contact information on a regular basis, so that you've got a second person that you can contact if you need to. The member permissions are also editable by the administrator or the designated officer. You can click on the edit icon and scroll to the bottom of any member's profile to see their member positions and permissions. So you can see quite a bit here. They have been organized according to some task grouped tasks. So there's manage treasurer duties, manage club details and members, manage ballots and stock watchers, manage access message board, manage access file storage, and manage the calendar. And so there's some different levels within for particular tasks within those. So the help page for the member positions and permissions page does have some more complete information about all of these various areas. You'll notice that about a half dozen of them have asterisks, which identify the default permissions for all members. And so otherwise, then you can determine who gets to handle which particular tasks. So for instance, ballots and stock watcher assignments might be undertaken by a portfolio manager or by the secretary. Or the file storage might be managed by the secretary, the calendar. You get to decide who handles that information, and we definitely suggest that you delegate within your club, that you spread it around, that you have different specific roles. So as more and more clubs are migrating into an online only platform or a primarily online investment club platform, there's a whole new set of tasks that have to be undertaken on a regular basis. And so these tasks on the club website encompass the management of your club's private website. Again, you want to be careful that you don't give everybody the ability to create and delete message boards. Your club could have a half dozen different message boards / mailing lists set up. If all of the members had the ability to delete the message boards, then you can imagine where this is leading. Somebody's going to accidentally delete an entire decade's worth of email discussions, thinking that they're just removing it from their personal view. So you want to be careful about giving people rights to delete and create files and folders and functions on the website. So do check those pretty carefully. This is a sample kind of permission set by common officers who you might how you might set up and what permissions you might give to everyone, what might be handled by the president or the secretary, etc. But feel free to modify this according to your club's own needs and own resources. So that information is you can review this information later, kind of figure out how it all works. It's also a good idea to review your member permissions periodically. This might be a good job if you are the club administrator or even a member of a club after tonight, to log into My iClub and look at the treasurer list and the administrator list in the people tab. And if you see somebody who is set as a treasurer but hasn't been active as the treasurer for a couple of years, you might inquire, why is that permission there? Should that be removed? As we suggested, it's always good to have a backup, but do you need 4 treasurers? I can't imagine too many clubs need 4 treasurers. If someone, for instance, a former treasurer, was needed to take a look at a particular problem, you can grant them that permission temporarily, but just remember to remove it at the end of the assigned task so that it doesn't linger there forever and ever. So we have, there's also on the member profile, there is a member role, which is sort of a, might also consider to be an officer position designation. We have some standard club officer positions of accountant, member, president, vice president, treasury, secretary, etc. And there are also, you can create custom positions, such as using the other feature, such as portfolio manager or who's responsible for snacks, etc. And so that process, let me go back and grab my arrow here. It's up at the top is where you'll see this the role drop down here. And once that information has been set in that area, it appears on the people page underneath the member's name. It's a little clunky, I will admit. You can see here treasurer and administrator underneath the names of the members here on the people page. That's where that information comes from. You know, there's also kind of a default member designation, but it only appears if you select it on that member positions and permissions section. And I think what happens is that many clubs, they might set they've got a new slate of officers. So somebody adjusts the member profiles for the new officers, but doesn't remove them from the old officers. So they tend to not always be current from the clubs where I see that are using it. But it is there, and it might be something that we can look at improving as we go forward. Bonnie's asked about member withdrawals and how to delete a member. So we're going to talk about that now. From the people page, anyone who's got the ability to invite and eject members, or the administrator, can click the withdraw button icon on it's the little exit door to initiate the withdrawal process. If the member or visitor has a $0 balance, they can simply be removed. There's nothing special. You click the withdraw icon and they are removed. Their access is removed from the website. That means their username and password will no longer get them into your club. They can still log into my iClub. All they'll see is the demo club at that point. But their access to your club has been terminated. If the member's got any amount of value in the club, you can't remove them from the site without processing a withdrawal. And as a reminder, we've got a withdrawal scenario calculator that really will help you determine the optimal method of withdrawing cash versus cash in stock. If you're using stock, which stock to use, the benefits in a full withdrawal, transferring stock, appreciated stock, etc. It's very complicated. And the rules are different for partial and full withdrawals, but you can optimize withdrawals to benefit both the member and the club by using that calculator, and following the suggestions there can really be a great money saver, or at least help you to defer taxes that you might incur unnecessarily too soon. So that's just something to keep in mind. Here is that withdrawal scenario calculator in action, where you select, and we've done webinars where we go through the member withdrawal functions. So you can definitely check out those past webinars where we go through the various scenarios and determining how it works. But you can initiate that from the member section of the accounting, or from the people page if you have the appropriate permissions. Once the members have been withdrawn, then you can, or removed, they will now show in the former members list. So at the top of the people page on the far right, there's a link that says show former members. So there you can click on that, and those former members now display at the bottom of the people page, so separate from everyone else. And so that is where you can kind of verify that a withdrawn member is truly been withdrawn. They will show up in the former member section. And just again, I'll throw this out there, for withdrawn members will not be able to download your club's financial documents in that last year of their membership. So you want to keep that in mind. We'll remind you during tax time of that as well, but they won't be able to log in to get that tax information. So finally, we'll take some questions in just a couple of minutes, but we'll also just cover access for visitors. We mentioned before, you can invite visitors to your club website. They will set up a username and password. It will allow them to have access to some, but not all, of the same features of your club's website that members get. And the idea is that you've invited someone to check out your club as a potential member. So you want to let them check around, understand your portfolio, understand your process for selecting stocks, review your partnership agreement in the file storage area, look at your current portfolio, etc. So those visitors can be upgraded to members if they join, or they can be removed, and that removes their access to your club's website. The process is the same as adding members. You need their name and their email address. They'll get a link. They will be able to set up their username and password and then access the club website. So they can access a lot of club level information, but not specific member information. So they can see accounting information, including past transactions, all the reports. They can see the watch list. And the idea here is that maybe you can have them add a stock to the watch list and do a stock study. And so that would be a condition of membership. They can see the list of members and visitors, but not any of the personal information, just the names. They can see files in the file library. They can see the calendar. And you can also have your administrator grant visitors more access, such as to particular message boards, or allow them to upload files to the file library, so they can contribute, a stock study or some stock research, or a document that explains why they want to be a member of your club. So you can grant them some additional access, but most of it is pretty basic access. Now we'll wrap up with the member discussions area. We've made some changes here. We'll be covering message boards in the next couple of months as well in a little more detail. We've got some plans to refresh the message board, the message boards. The message boards work on my iClub by allowing you to use them as an email list that people can use to discuss stocks, or as a discussion forum on your club's website where people can come and enter messages and respond to discussions that are going there, and that information is all archived in the club's website. So the idea is that you've got a permanent record. You can go back and look at messages in the past. You can create multiple message boards. The default when you set up your club account for the first time is two lists. One is the private messages list, and the other is the mailing list. But you can change the names. You can create and remove different message boards. So you could have one for officers. You can set the access just for officers. You could have one that's meant for stock discussions only, for your stock committee, your portfolio management committee, etc. However, whatever works best for you, you can configure those message boards. The idea behind the private messages list is that it only allows members to access it, not visitors. And additionally, there's an option that is set up by default that you can override, but the default is that members can't see messages that were posted before they became members. So the idea is the private messages list is where you can talk about member candidates. Once they join, they can't see what the discussion was about them, or any of the archived discussions prior to when they were a member. The mailing list is initially set to be accessed by members and visitors. So the officer who's got permission to create and delete message boards can adjust the various configurations here. Here it is in the member profiles, where you can see the four key permissions that can be set up for members depending on your particular needs. Not a good idea to allow any member to delete other people's messages other than someone who's got an administrative role managing your message boards. The individual message boards have a bunch of options, and we've added the ability at the bottom there to set visitor access for particular boards, as well as you can send email to only some members. And maybe there's always that one member who says, I don't want to get a lot of email. So don't send me email. You can restrict them and eliminate emails from the message board option for that message board. But you can also allow visitors to read or read and post particular boards that are setting here, and that can be useful in certain circumstances as well. So just more options for members to be able to utilize those. And then I'll look at the some advanced topics, that some question that really came up recently about joint members. We don't support joint memberships. A membership is for, a My iClub club website is for one individual. But we recognize that some clubs have spouses who are members under one account. But the problem is that only one of them could, even if you added the spouse as a visitor and gave them broad access, they still wouldn't, the spouse who was not the primary partner would not be able to download the tax filings, the tax forms, for instance, the K-1. But that's one of the reasons we added that visitor access to specific message boards. So you could, in effect, the spouse has access to all of the reports as a visitor, all of the message boards as a visitor, and in other ways is treated just like a full member without, with half of a vote in essence. But there is a little bit of a workaround that's required for that particular situation. And again, we don't really recommend it. You've got to have one tax ID number per member of an investment club. And so we've been sticking pretty close to that and don't expect to expand the capacity to really support joint members in any substantive way. All right, so let me take a look at some of the questions that have come in here at this point. So Larry asks if if we've got visitors, do they receive email from the club with the agenda or other items? And so again, as we just showed there, yes, if they are set up for that particular message board, they can receive that information. Again, the default is no. So if you wish the visitors to receive the agenda or notices about upcoming meetings, that you're utilizing the club message board function, mailing list function, then you need to set that to enable visitors to get that email. Cheryl asks, when members enter social security numbers, it's not visible to other members, correct? And yes, that is correct. Members will never see other members' social security numbers. Only the administrator and the treasurer ever see the social security numbers of members. So again, we treat that information with the utmost of security practices. Let's see here. If a former member, Helen asks, wants to rejoin, can you go through the process to do this? Thanks. Yeah, there's the question here is that a member withdraws from the club and then rejoins the club. In essence, they can be reactivated from the former members list, so that they do not have to recreate a new username and password. And we do sort of recommend that. Sometimes, however, that can be undesirable because their personal total return calculations will start from the first time they were members, not the second time they were members. If that's a problem, then you can go through the process and have them and just invite them again and have them create a new username and password that they would use for the their current membership. So there are two situations there that you might want to consider for that new member. And let's see. Joe says, how does a non-member, non-guest view the public pages or files made public by the club? And that is a good question. We have the ability on your file storage area to set, for instance, here is the club's bylaws and partnership agreement. You can see the little people icon over here indicates the bylaws are are able to be accessed by the general public. Anybody who has this particular link, which is down at the bottom. So I'm going to open this in a private window, and that will show you. So now I'm no longer logged in to the club website. So all I can see here are the files that have been made public. And again, it's the only way to get there is if you know this link up here at the top. So the idea is that we've made our bylaws accessible. We've made some of the other, there's a stock study and an introduction to investing PowerPoint slide that's there. There's a stock and a toolkit file on the watch list. Those have all been made public by the club. Nothing in the stock research folder has been made public. You can see the bylaws are public, but the partnership agreement is not, just for demonstration purposes. If I flip back to the logged in file storage, you can see a number of files. The tax archives are, of course, always going to be private, can't be set to public. The free resources are not part of the public, but everything else that you see in this case are all private files. So it's scroll to the bottom of this list, and then you can copy that public website information there, that link, and that will get non-guests access, and that's useful. Again, I would suggest create a welcome to our investment club if you're interested in joining our club, kind of a document that would have some basic information in it, and decide if there's other information that you think would be useful. If you've got an investment policy statement, definitely consider making that public. If you've done a member who's done some documentation or writing about your club's education policies, it doesn't include a lot of public or private information, you can make that possible as well. So that would be, that's how you go about doing that. Okay, I think that just about addresses it. I think most of the rest of the questions have been answered by Sean and Russell in the back office. So we'll thank them especially for helping out tonight, and thank all of you for turning out for our webinar. We'll be looking forward to seeing you in December, which is our year-end closing the books for 2021 presentations. So we will be looking at the procedures to validate the accuracy of your club's books and get ready for the 2021 tax season. So that is our December topic. In January, we'll be looking at preparing your club's federal and state taxes using the My Club Tax Printer program. So that will be handled in January. In February is our Club Tax Clinic. And then we will be taking a break in March. Our webinar is actually on March 15th, which is Investment Club Tax Day. So federal taxes are due for partnerships are due on March 15th. So since that is our, I I think that is our third Tuesday date, so we will be skipping the webinar on that date, and we'll be back in April after that. So that's what we've got coming up. So I want to thank you for making it to our presentation tonight. We'll look forward to seeing you in December. Thanks for turning out once again, and I wish you all the best. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in December.